He's vengeance, he's the knight, he's Batman, and he's animated. I'm talking about the Chip Kid Batman animated book on this video. Here we go. Hey, thanks for watching the video. My name is Bernie Gonzalez, and I am a comic book artist and writer. And in these videos, I just like to share some comics, graphic novels, magazines, anything that has been a big influence on me. And Batman the Animated Series certainly has been a big creative influence in my writing, in my artwork, in my storytelling. The series first premiered September 5th, 1992. It was part of the Fox Kids Saturday morning lineup. And then they actually aired an episode in prime time the day after on September 6th on Leather Wings. And it just goes to show that they felt so strongly that not only was this a kid's cartoon, but that it would appeal to an adult audience. And it did, and left an impact. It has a massive legacy. Premiered in 92. This book, Batman animated by Paul Dini and Chip Kidd, was released 6 years later in 1998. So Paul Dini worked on Tiny Toons, Dungeons and Dragons, He-Man, then later on Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond. He created Harley Quinn, and you have Chip Kidd, who's worked on a number of book covers, well-known graphic designer. 144 pages. Kind of flip through it here quickly. Sorry for the glossiness, but it's very picture heavy, which is great because it has sketches, storyboards, paintings, character designs, merchandise photos, just perfect for a flip through and perfect for inspiration. I'm just surprised that because of the impact that the animated series has, there are not piles of coffee books about the animated series. So one, I am grateful that this is out there and that I have my hands on it. But two, it's kind of unfortunate because it's gone out of print. So it goes for, triple digits easy on eBay. So if you find a copy out there that's in good shape at a good price that you can afford, highly recommend get your hands on it. Just kind of unfortunate it has not gone back into print because I think this booklet is just, again, a great resource, but also just gives you just a great collection of iconic images. I mean, talk about iconic there, that shot from Batman the Animated Series that you just saw everywhere and still see everywhere. It was definitely a resource that when I saw this, it helped me get a behind-the-scenes look at how the cartoon was made, how it was created. And look at that. Just beautiful, beautiful images. And the great thing about having a designer like Chip Kidd, they're presented incredibly well. See some shots from the title sequence as well, some of the layouts. People who brought Batman the Animated Series to life. Producer Gene McCurdy, who brought in Tim and Radomski, and then she also brought in Alan Burnett, who is a producer. You have people like Glenn Murakami, who worked on later Batman Beyond, Teen Titans Go, Ben 10, I believe, as well. Kevin Altieri, who worked on an 80s show that I loved, Cops, but then also on Stripperella. And the Gen 13 movie was kind of like a one-and-done. You can find it here and there, bootlegs and on YouTube. As an artist, I just can't help but look at Bruce Timm's desk here, where you see everything from a Mars Attacks Alien, Kirby Galactus, 1995 Batman Forever poster. Looks like there's a X-Men Essentials back there. Some Happy Meal Batman toys. Looks like a Toy Biz Marvel Universe Daredevil. Something called Immoral Tales. Looks like it's a book sitting in the hands of a creepy doll holding a creepy baby. Legion of Superheroes here, and some of those 12-inch G.I. Joe figures. I have to think when they're coming to your desk to take pictures, you have people in production, writers and artists who are curating the image so that people can see them, and it looks the way you want people to look. But I get a sense this is actually what Bruce Timm's desk looks like. All the inspirations, the messiness, the supplies, it's all there. I even think that's one of the characters from a Giant Robo anime that I love that certainly would make sense that Bruce Timm would be influenced by and would also love as well. But again, just a glimpse into the behind the scenes of the making of the show. Features an introduction by Bruce Timm. and some of the early designs. I mean, just so, again, iconic, that idea as an artist where if you can turn your character into a silhouette and the audience can still read what's going on. These are just seems like some of the principles that Bruce Timm and the other artists early on understood very clearly, and they brought that into conceptualizing, into producing the show. Some amazing background shots here where you can see Eric Radomski's contributions. He is known for kind of creating that dark deco style, that kind of combination of 40s pulp, film noir. He worked on dark black paper instead of lighter or white paper, and it just changes the tone, the mood, so it doesn't look like anything else. And again, apologize for the glare there, but it just, one of the reasons why the show spoke to me, because it didn't look like anything that was on TV at the time. And look at that. Look at that. Just some of those amazing title cards. They were designed by Eric Radomski, leaning on that retro 40s feel and really just trying to capture the episode's theme. Not a moment necessarily from the episode or a specific shot. And I'm just thinking, as an artist, that's difficult to do, to try to kind of concentrate a theme or a feeling into one image, but keep it simple, not busy, not distracting, to try to convey to an audience what this may be about. Just masterclass work, amazing work. And unfortunately, dropped those title cards when the show moved from Fox to Kids WB. But I mean, I would love to have a coffee table book just of those title cards alone. Just amazing, amazing work. You have some reviews, some quotes. Rick Burkett, who actually was a Batman artist. Howard Chaykin, American Flag. Mark Evanier, he actually worked, he's a writer, but worked with Jack Kirby as well. Kelly Jones, very distinct Batman artist, worked on Red Rain. Matt Wagner, who created Grendel. Les Daniels, who is a known comic, passed away unfortunately, but comic book historian and author. So a little bit of a cross-section of everyone, from people like Paul Levitz that have been executive vice presidents, publishers at DC, to people like Neil Gaiman, all saying very nice things about the show and the impact that it's had. Again, some shots here. You can see some of Eric Radomski's preliminary background studies, just getting a sense for the tone of the show. But I mean, look at this. Just like nothing that I would have seen on TV. Just so many stark angles. That German expressionism is in there. Obviously influenced by the 1989 Batman movie that had a Gotham designed by Anton Furst. But, I mean, just able to take 1989 and then also Fleischer Superman cartoons, put it all together to bring us the world of Gotham, to start building the world of Batman. Just amazing stuff here. Of course, just some of the storyboards of that intro sequence. So well done. And just being able to see it broken down like this, again, as an artist, this was unbelievable. Just to be able to see this almost like second by second, beat by beat breakdown of what they did, and then to be able to pop in the DVD and just be able to watch it and pause it and then compare it. That's what I was doing, because I was trying to break the code, figure out how to reverse engineer it so that I could figure out how to do it myself. And this was invaluable, just to be able to see all of this and then see how in these small storyboards that were probably, 6 or 7 on a page on an 8.5 by 11, the fact that they were working quick to keep up with the production, but at the same time, there was something easy to read, something iconic in the storytelling. So you knew that when they worked on it, it would be amazing. Go through some of the voice actors and the casting there. Get some stuff here about standards and practices and the things they could not do, including this kind of funny shot here, drawing by Bruce Timm, just kind of tongue-in-cheek, talking about all the things that broadcast standards and practices told them they couldn't do. No child endangerment, guns, drugs, breaking glass, alcohol, smoking, nudity, religion, strangulation, and just a great shot of all of those things happening at once. Some of that early Eric Radomski shots. I love the fact that at least they are able to put in here who worked on some of these. This is production background by TMS, who's one of the animation studios from Japan that worked on the animated series and gave it a little bit of that anime feel. So you had that motion, that dynamism that was just amazing. Again, like nothing else you saw. But then just the fact that you see the skyline and it feels like a living, working city. There's billboards, there are people in these buildings, and they live in these places. It's just amazing artwork. Then you see some of this, again, some of that German expressionism, something very like, I don't know, just like Fritz Lang, Metropolis, just some Caligari, a little bit of all that in here. Nothing like what you would see on Saturday morning cartoons or even after school. Shots of even places like the stacked deck when they're going through and actually world building. You have Crime Alley, Arkham Asylum, and then you have these places like this bar that seems to be, by the wharfs with the biker gangs there called the stacked deck. Look at that. Just stunning work. Love how we see these sort of attitudes and the work-throughs of Batman the animated, of Batman in the animated series, how they would move him. Just how they were able to convey the attitude, the broodingness through the line work. And at the time, you had things like Super Friends and the New Adventures of Batman and Robin. Those were the cartoons that had come out primarily inspired by the 1966 Adam West Burt Ward series. So that's what he looked like in animated form. This was not that. There was a simplicity that they were trying to convey, but they were also trying to keep that dark deco design that Eric Radomski had, and not only in the backgrounds but also in the characters. But at the same time, how does Batman move? How does he? How do you get the athleticism, the martial arts background? How do you do all of that and make him feel like a gargoyle? Just big assignments that they were able to pull off, and that's why things like Batman the Animated Series have had such a big legacy. The designs in the Batmobile, Batplane, the Bat boat. I mean, just amazing designs here. Robin, and you can see some of the different iterations where has kind of like a Star Trek feel in that design. This one looks like the character Dr. Midnight. You have Batgirl here. They take a shot from one of the toys from Kenner, the Robin dragster, and I guess there was an accident in a toy factory that destroyed the original mold for this, so it makes it one of the rarest of the Batman animated series toys. So if you see it at a convention out there and you're looking to build a collection of this stuff, that's one to look for. Maybe not so much Winged Blitz Batgirl, which just feels like a money grab in the toy aisle. But if you can't find the regular Batman figure or Batgirl figure, then maybe you can get your parents to at least get you Winged Blitz Batgirl. Some shots here of Alfred. I think this is Mike Guggen who did some of these, but just gives you a sense for the confidence, the age, but also just the kind of fatherly figure that is Alfred. Some shots here from that amazing scene from Mask of the Phantasm laid out by Bruce Timm, where Batman, Bruce Wayne, first wears the Batman cowl and scares Batman. Just amazing stuff. Shots of some of the merchandise. Seems like everything from Eskimo pies, thermoses, unbelievable, boots, silly putty, kind of probably a Chef Boyardee. Oh, there we go, macaroni and cheese. Some shots of Joker. The great thing about this book is that not only do you get these designs, which would be more than enough for me, but then you get some of these early shots where you could tell that they're working through what the Joker should look like. That has more of that Dan DiCarlo, who's the house style for Archie. Has a little bit more of those exaggerated, almost humorous angles and roundedness to him compared to, what he looks like in the animated series, where there's a little bit of, there's Michael Golden, Will Eisner, a little bit of all that in the design, and, what they were able to do with the simplicity in it. You could tell that Harley Quinn, certainly, this is the first drawing, but certainly was changed and adapted before the final incarnation hit the screen. Some shots here from Mad Love, which came out in '94, and it was drawn by Bruce Timm. So I'm just, I can only imagine, I'm getting a headache just thinking about, as he's working on the animated series, doing designs, worrying about the story, and at the same time working on this this comic that winds up winning an award and is just amazing and well worth looking at on its own. But, he's probably overseeing a lot of this stuff too, and making sure that people are sticking to the style that he's created, that other artists are interpreting, to try to keep it all on model, to keep it in the world of Batman the Animated Series. Some of his pages, and you can see that he certainly wasn't phoning it in, because you have an entire breakdown here for colors, all of his notes. So he was very mindful that whatever was going to go out there that he was going to work on, that it looked exactly the way he wanted it to. Shots of Commissioner Gordon and Bullock. Again, you get more of that cartoony feel. The blimp, character Montoya, who was introduced in the animated series. She might have been actually introduced in the comics like the month before, but then became one of those original introduction characters, just like Harley Quinn. Get Catwoman here, certainly inspired by Batman Returns. You just see these turnarounds and these shots. Again, things that, as an artist, I did not see anywhere. I was dying to see more of things like this, more behind-the-scenes stuff. Loved it. Storyboards, and loved that. Just like the motioned movement. Amazing stuff. Two-Face. This is where you start getting into that almost like Chester Gould, Dick Tracy style design, where things feel a little bit exaggerated. Things like flat top. All right, well, this character, this one specifically drawn by Bruce Timm, just feels like he could be a Dick Tracy villain. A very Edward G. Robinson inspired Penguin. This certainly looking more like the Danny DeVito version in Returns. See a little bit of everything here. Some Kevin Nolan, Mike Mignola. They were some of the comic book artists who contributed to the character designs, the concept designs for Batman the Animated Series. And here you can see some of the work that they did. I have to remember this, throw this out there. So Sega CD had a Batman game that features cutscenes that were animated by TMS, the Japanese studio I mentioned earlier, who, again, did some of the best animation for the animated series for some of the episodes. And for Sega CD, the cutscenes are almost considered like a lost episode of the animated series. It features Poison Ivy, Joker, Riddler, Harley Quinn, Clayface, all voiced by the actors. Well worth looking for on YouTube if you want to check it out. Speaking of Clayface, love this. Just attitudes, how he would look with some of the shading here. I'm just imagining that it has to be like Copic type markers, just to give you a sense for, the density, the thickness that is Clayface, and how he would move and how he would look bulky and weighty. Have a little bit of a Ra's al Ghul appearance. Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, I think it was in like the 240s of Batman, where you have Ra's al Ghul and Talia, and Alan Burnett, one of the producers, talks about how he went into the Batman Encyclopedia, the greatest Batman stories ever told, and pulled stories from people like Denny O'Neil, Norm Grayfogle, Neil Adams, and brought that all into the animated series to try to adapt some of those fan favorite stories, some of those stories that were very prominent in the history of Batman, and try to adapt them to the animated series. So here you can see a nice breakdown of the storyboards for one of those episodes that features Ra's al Ghul. And it's cool because you get these fold-outs in there as well. Get the Riddler, very much feeling a little bit like at least here by Frank Gorshin from the Batman 66, and then eventually taken to an exaggerated tone with Jim Carrey. But at least in these, you have that sense where there's something very classy, just something very interesting about the design, because he's a hard character to write. You have to write really good riddles in order to have Riddler pay off. You know, you can't have him be too much like the Joker. He's not a muscle-bound henchman or anything like that. You know, you have to play around with the fact that he's challenging Batman's mind. It just, you know, the shadows and everything make him look more threatening and more ominous. Just, again, good design work there. Man-Bat Studies, Hatter Studies by Kevin Nolan. Love that. Love being able to see some of those early designs. Freeze, Mike Mignola. Just perfect person to bring in some of that sort of steampunk Victorian style. You know, it just feels perfect for Mr. Freeze, where he would have that look, and at the same time it just looks incredibly ominous when you see something like this, when you can capture a character so perfectly there. Just beautiful. Some Poison Ivy, certainly inspired by Dan DeCarlo, Bob Clampett, Al Cap, some of those artists that, you know, have more of the, again, the roundedness, the sexiness in it there. Inspired Bruce Wayne, but a design that you see more in Poison Ivy. And obviously you see, again, different styles here, where you can see she looks a little different than some of the other characters, not as angular. And speaking of influences, Jack Kirby certainly an influence in these early designs for Bane by Bruce Timm, where you can see that look just feels like that could be a Kirby character. Just amazing. Now we're getting into Mask of the Phantasm. So they got like a 65 episode commitment for the series, and that's why they were able to mine so much of the Batman mythology and some of the great stories of Batman. And then as they got acclaim, as they were building up momentum, they were going to do a direct-to VHS movie that would eventually become Mask of the Phantasm. But the series was doing so well that they graduated it to a theatrical release. So here we can see some poster designs, some of the backgrounds, early designs for Phantasm, which was inspired by, I believe it's the Reaper from Batman, and they just adapted that storyline, but then changed a few things in there as well. But you can see some of the shots here, just sets up the mood for some of these scenes. And then you also have Sub-Zero, one of the other direct-to DVD VHS movies at the time that was released, and in that case that featured Mr. Freeze in his Arctic retreat. And then there was an oil mine where you had these amazing shots of an explosion. And now we start getting into the new adventures, where you feature more Batman, less Batman and more Batgirl, Robin, and Nightwing, made at the same time that they were making Superman the animated series. So I have to imagine from a production standpoint, you have new designs for some of these characters that are more streamlined and match the designs for Superman the animated series. So when you have production crews that are working on the two of them, I just have to imagine it's easier to not have two styles, to just have one. So everything looks a little different. Batman loses the yellow circle around the bat signal, and then there's little changes in, say, for example, Joker. You've got the eyes that just have those beady, sunken eyes in there. Everything just becomes a little bit more streamlined. Bruce Wayne's hair gets slicked back a little bit, but then, you know, you get still some of that amazing, just well done design work by these artists, Glenn Murakami, Bruce Timm, that are still able to convey a lot with a few lines. Newer designs for Hatter, Poison Ivy. Killer Croc certainly was one of the biggest changes, along with Scarecrow and Penguin, who has that more Burgess Meredith style. Bane, Batman, Robin, See some of the maquettes that they made of those. Those are kind of neat, but also expensive. Background shots that you see there. Some of the toys. And then the great thing about that last season where you did get more characters like the Demon Etrigan or the Creeper, and they started introducing other characters since they were, trying to move away a little bit from Batman and definitely less of the dark deco mature storytelling, like Perchance to Dream or Almost Got Him, and you would get into more like, all right, well, let's have Batman and Robin together fighting crime, but also being able to, tell different stories and adaptations, including the Legends of the Dark Knight episode, where they're able to go to like Dick Sprang, just classic versions of Batman and Robin, but also do, the Dark Knight Returns and get into more of like a Frank Miller dark and gritty version. I believe Darwin Cook also worked on some of these with Glenn Murakami and some other artists out there, but just being able to interpret Frank Miller's line work into ways that they were able to interpret Dick Sprang's artwork and just kind of bring it to animated life. I mean, just shots like this where, if you've seen the original panels, the shots, they did a great job being able to interpret it and bring it to the screen. Then you have an outro by Paul Dini kind of teasing the fact that, yep, on the horizon is Batman Beyond. Great episode guide here at the end. And that is Batman Animated. So if you have your hands on this already, count yourself lucky, because again, it's out of print, a little harder to find, certainly expensive to get your hands on, but one of the books that I certainly enjoy, love looking at every once in a while, just being able to take it off the shelf and skim through it, because such a great resource. And again, Batman the Animated Series, big influence on me and big influence on other people, but good book that just documents the legacy and impact of the animated series. So thanks for watching the video. Worlds collide when DC and Mondo come together to give us Batman the Animated Series, the Phantom City Collection book. That's what I'm talking about in this video. Here we go. Out the video. My name is Bernie Gonzalez and I am a comic book writer and artist, and in these videos I like to share some of the comics, graphic novels, books, and magazines that have big influences in my storytelling and my art style. And in today's video we're talking about Batman the Animated Series, the Phantom City Creative Collection, and it includes artwork by Phantom City creative artist Justin Erickson, and also has a foreword by Paul Dini, who worked on the animated series. So if you have not checked out this book, it was published by Mondo, and Mondo is a subsidiary of the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema chain. They release limited edition posters, vinyl soundtracks, clothing, toys, and more. They work with well-known artists like Becky Cloonan, Ali Moss, and Jock. They cover movies, TVs, comics. They have a number of different collectibles, like a Castlevania vinyl soundtrack collection, Creature from the Black Lagoon figure, Batman the Animated Series, Joker, Mr. Freeze, and Catwoman figures that are very large in size, but just are beautiful to look at, also somewhat pricey. They've released some Batman vinyl soundtracks as well. So obviously, being a big fan of the animated series, when I saw that they released those posters, I wanted them, but they were very expensive, limited, and hard to get my hands on. So I was grateful that they eventually released all those posters into a collection, which was a little easier to get. It's about between 30 and 40 bucks, so much more in my price range. And just wanted to flip through some of it and check out some of this. It's 144 pages, incredibly well designed. Features artwork that certainly was inspired by Bruce Timm, Glenn Murakami, Ronnie Del Carmen, some of the artists that originally worked on Batman the Animated Series. Here we get a shot of Phantom City Creative, and that's Paige Reynolds and then Justin Erickson. So the artist, Justin Erickson, do an interview with him, show gallery where they had some of those posters that I was mentioning. And then now we get into some of the artwork that's actually collected. And let's start right out of the gate with Mask of the Phantasm. Some great behind the scenes shots, just sketches of trying to figure out how they're going to do the Mask of the Phantasm Batman poster. Love the design, just beautiful. Some other variant editions. Orange works well, but for my money, the black and white here, and apologize for the glare, just looks stunning. It's like you can see little pieces in here where I'm not sure the tools they're using, but I imagine it has to be maybe the noise tool in Photoshop, where you're able to get that kind of I don't know, very synonymous with like Art Deco style, and just really beautifully well done. Just very iconic shots. Feels like the intro from the animated series. Also, that last shot in Mask of the Phantasm where Batman slowly pulls the head up and looks at the bat signal. Again, just trying to give viewers, give collectors a concentrated version of these characters, and this kind of tells you everything you want to know about Catwoman. Just beautifully executed. And there's some shots here where, you know, you could tell a little busier, maybe even a little simpler in some cases in some of those early concepts, but this concept here just executes it well. On Leather Wings, where you have that feeling of a kind of a old school sci-fi, maybe 40s or 50s monster sci-fi kind of poster. I actually kind of enjoy this one here a bit more because you get the shadow of the Doctor actually in the shape of the bat behind him. Feels ominous, but I can see, you know, kind of what they're going for here. You almost are missing all the test tubes and the mad scientist stuff that you would have there. It's the iconic shot of in Heart of Ice where he has the ballerina snow globe, and such a I mean, it's just an iconic thing in Heart of Ice in that episode, and being able to kind of put that all together. It's very smart. That poster for an episode, It's Never Too Late, which has that sort of gangster, you know, Cagney kind of feel to it. So definitely leaned into those pulp stylings, those posters. Joker's Favor, just again, great design work all around. Poison Ivy as a character who, you know, Bruce Timm, many influences, Alex Toth, Jack Kirby, Wally Wood, but also Dan DeCarlo, who is known as the artist that has like the house style for Archie, and it's more rounded, more humorous in tone, and you certainly see that in Poison Ivy's design. So if you're Justin Erickson and you're working on this, you know, you lean into it. This is nice. I actually kind of enjoy that one a bit more, that idea of like the negative space and kind of taking advantage of it, and with the right colors it would just really sing. It just would work really well. This one a little bit more subtle, but you know, again, just still beautiful design. Nothing to Fear. This is probably, I mean, when you see some of the early concepts here, some nice ones there. I love the bat signal in Scarecrow's mouth there, but this just feels ominous. It feels scary. It feels like a horror movie, and just Batman falling to depths of madness, depths of fear. It works well, incredibly well executed. Just very iconic. You can almost close your eyes a little bit and squint, and you can still see the creepy eyes. You can see the bat signal. It's all there. Crime Alley, when you see like these early shots, it's kind of neat because you could tell he figured it out here, but then in this shot, put it all in, put it together. Just really, again, great design. Clock King. I think he only has 2 episodes that he's featured in the entire series, so there's not a lot to work on. So whether it's Clock Tower, Gears, the eyes, kind of putting it all together. Another great poster. Two-Face. Love this one. Something kind of interesting about this, because you see Batman at this size compared to Two-Face, has like that Dick Sprang feel, like, you know, you could see something larger than life, but there's something kind of neat about this too, especially when you see the red against the black and white in the grayscale. Works really well. Blue's interesting. I would go with the red. Also neat kind of to see these alternate designs. Gotham Detective Tales, love this from I've Got Batman in My Basement. Again, feels like old pulp font, like from the Spider or the Shadow. Killer Croc. Again, I would have probably gone with that one just because I love the suggestion. You don't really see Killer Croc fully, but for an episode that features Killer Croc and not to see him in the poster, I understand why you picked this. I like the less is more here, the water, how it all kind of flows together, but would have gone with that one. But again, still beautiful work. Mad Hatter, good opportunity to kind of flex your muscles and try to make it feel like a storybook cover, storybook design. Lean into all the Alice in Wonderland iconography, where you can have the Cheshire Cat, tea parties, kind of bring that all together. Night of the Ninja, one of those underrated episodes, but Alan Burnett and all the producers were able to really kind of dig into Bruce Wayne's background during his training, and through this episode, kind of put the spotlight on, some of his martial arts training and what he did. And in this one, the artist was able to really kind of hone in on those Japanese woodblock style designs and just, make sure that was conveyed in the design for that poster. Tiger. It's very busy, and when you see it, it is beautiful, but I love the fact that you have these characters, Catwoman and then the tiger there, who are just kind of almost like melding into the background. So it does feel a little muddy because everything feels the same. There's not something to highlight or pop as much as I would have wanted it to be, but it feels it executed really well. Like this was done by a very, very accomplished hand, but it needs I would think, a little bit of contrast. I would throw maybe that one beam of yellow breaking through the leaves of the trees, through the canopy, hitting Batman, so that these guys, the Tiger, Catwoman, are still hiding in shadows, but Batman is just on the spotlight there as he's about to be attacked. Kind of death from above there. Dreams in Darkness, just again beautiful work there. Beware the Grey Ghost, one of my favorite episodes, but again leaning into the Spider, the Shadow, Inner Sanctum, a lot of those pulp designs, those posters. Feels like something that you would see as a serial poster for Flash Gordon, Commander Cody, the Adventures of the Grey Ghost. It all feels right. I Am the Night. It's interesting because this feels more like there's the artist known as Jock. It feels more like something he would have designed. This one here feels more like what would have worked for this book. I like that concept design. The idea of the glasses being broken, the shadow, it all just, that's really iconic, very pretty. This feels more on the nose. Almost Got Him. Beautiful use of the bat signal there. Just being able to kind of hone in on the theme of the episode, where you've got all the villains around a table telling their own stories. And then, of course, if you watch the episode, not going to spoil it for you, say Batman is always looming in the shadows, and in this case, being able to use the bat signal to great effectiveness. Moon of the Wolf. I can imagine this is a little harder because you know that there's a moon involved, there's a bat signal involved, so there's a lot of things here that just make sense. But I think in some cases where the font has the feel of those Universal Monster movies, those posters, again, it's well done, but it's hard as a designer to try to think of how to concentrate one theme, one feeling into one image. So, kudos to Justin Erickson for being able to create so many different well-done designs. This one just feels, again, like you've got a moon, you've got a wolf, of course you've got a bat signal. It all works, I get it, but there's maybe some places to be creative in the composition, but nonetheless, not going to judge the guy. That's really, really nice. And then you get something like this, where it's just a perfect nod to Bing Crosby's famous White Christmas album cover, but then you combine that with the Joker, and all the suggestions are there. Just this is an example of perfect design, where the person who's looking at this is maybe bringing in all of that history with that album cover, except now it's the Joker, and you even get the little Jingle Bells Batman spells out here in the corner. Love it. Riddler. You know there's going to be puzzles. You know there's going to be something like that. So this, I love this one. I love that because it's just ominous, and it feels like you could even push the Riddler even further up and just kind of cut him off here and have Batman's shadow there. But again, this works incredibly well too. The question mark, Batman running, Joker's wild. Of course you're going to do cards, trading cards, so it perfectly works. His Silicone Soul. I love Hardak. Those two-parters, Heart of Steel, two of my favorite episodes. Not only in the animation, but in the concept, the design, everything. So I love the tech, the circuitry in there. It works. Has even like that feeling of a little bit of Batman Beyond as well. Laughing Fish, love it. 40s, 50s, 60s style advertising design. Leans right into it, even with all these little images here. Harley with the Kiss the Cook apron, the two henchmen. It's all there. Little nod to maybe Thelma and Louise in this Harley and Ivy episode poster design. Man Who Killed Batman. I'm certainly a fan who, don't get me wrong, I love seeing a lot of art on the page sometimes, but sometimes in cases like this, less is more, and this tells a lot in the story. So I love the choices that he made here right across the board in the early concepts into the final design with very little doing a lot. Birds of a Feather. Blind as a Bat. Love the use of Braille here. Just, again, very inventive, very smart. Demon's Quest. The fact that it looks like a poster that you would see in Indiana Jones or something that's kind of globe-trotting makes complete sense with the story that Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams wrote. I want to say it was like in Batman like 240 something, where they introduced Ra's al Ghul and Talia. So when it was adapted to the animated series, it makes perfect sense to use a poster design like this if you're Phantom City creative and just lean into all of that. The swashbuckling, the Errol Flynn, the globe-trotting, the Indiana Jones. Perfect. Shadow of the Bat. Something kind of interesting here because it's understated in the fact that, it feels simple, but the idea is that, this isn't about Batman. This isn't about Robin. This is about Batgirl. This is about Batgirl making her appearance on the scene. Barbara Gordon showing, that she's completely capable, not only to Batman, but also to her father, Gordon. And this makes sense. This is nice. I like the different iterations here. There's something really classy about the grayscale with the yellow, because the yellow just pops. But there's also something really neat here with this almost like reddish pinkish color, because it just leans into Barbara Gordon's hair color as well. Clayface. I'm just imagining as an artist, this is fun because you know that unlike some of the other villains like Riddler and Hatter, where, like Hatter, you can play with the idea of storybook design and the Alice in Wonderland stuff, Riddler question marks and puzzles. Well, with Clayface, it's kind of like Terminator 2. It's like, you can have him just morph and turn into whatever you want to just accomplish what you want. So didn't go super nuts in this, but just enough to show that Batman's in trouble and Clayface is larger than life. He's a different type of villain. Speaking of villains, Trial. Love this one. Just nice and simple, ominous. Batman is not he's on trial here, but he is not the feature. It is all the villains sitting there as jury. Harley Quinn definitely has that feeling of those, World War II style designs that they would have on the side of bomber planes, as she is literally sitting on a bomb. But all works out with the episode Harley Quinnade, because if I remember right, she actually steals a bomb. Bane. This all just works. To kind of lean into that wrestling style that Bane has, and then also the starkness of the red totally works. And then obviously featuring Bane's muscles. We don't even need to see the venom, the stuff that's making him all roided out. But the design works. Harley's holiday, you know, cool. Bullet for Bullock. Love this one. Something really neat about this. Just feels like a Parker, you know, book series cover design. Love this. Looks like this would be the cover for like a Criterion collection of a movie called Bullet for Bullock. Like I said, not only were there posters, but there was also a design, and Phantom City Creative also designed the artwork for the vinyl releases, so that you see, you know, kind of leaning into the cityscapes, the designs, the blimps. Love these mugshot cards. Just has that feeling of Chester Gould, who created Dick Tracy, you know, where you would see all these villains. Just perfect. And then also you get the little bit of characterization before, afterwards. They look a little bit beat up. Then using some of those poster designs, but then also creating some extra stuff here. Love that. Love that he was able to use this design as well, because again, I love that. I love this, and this is where it starts really looking like the sort of sci-fi horror movie posters of the atomic age from the 40s and 50s. But this to me just feels so iconic, so simple, but so effective. On leather wings, some of the early designs that they had, some of the vinyls where you could see how they used some of the poster designs initially. Fire from Olympus. Lock Up. Love that. Just a stark white. Beautifully well done. Kind of neat because you always see the red sky of Gotham from the animated series, and in this case he goes in with the blue. Looks different but right. Heroes of Gotham cards. Must have released a card set that went with it that were then Jokerized. Interesting. But I do love the Art Deco style design of this. Just feels like a card set that maybe a Gotham PD or somebody would release as sort of a public relations stunt. Like here, Laughing Fish. That's kind of neat. The gas. Love that. Some of the designs we've seen before. Demon's Quest. Kind of taking Talia's hair, using it in a graphic design style. Love this from Crime Alley. Take out the title there, Appointment in Crime Alley, and just have the red of the roses. All right, and that is Batman Animated Series Phantom City Creative Collection. Love Batman the Animated Series, so there's not enough, at least in my opinion, there's not enough booklets out there that collect artwork from the animated series, and in this case, the fact that Mondo was able to collect all of the work from Phantom City Creative from artist Justin Erickson into one collection for a great price. Well worth getting. It's still out there. I believe there's soft cover editions. This is the hardcover edition. But if you're a fan of Batman the Animated Series, definitely a must-have. Thanks for watching the video. As if I need an excuse to talk about Batman the Animated Series, in this video, I'm going to be talking about a booklet that was actually released with the Batman Animated Series DVD collection. I know, kind of weird, but check it out. Here we go. Thanks for checking out the video. My name is Bernie Gonzalez, and I am a comic book writer and artist. And in these videos, I like to share some of the comics, magazines, books, just things that I have on my shelves that have big inspirations in my ability to make comics and my storytelling. And one of those is this booklet for Batman the Animated Series. So have to go into the world of physical media here. And before Netflix, before really YouTube was a thing, I was buying a lot of these animated series on VHS and then later on DVD. And originally, Batman the Animated Series was released in 4 volumes back in 2004. And each volume had 4 to 5 DVDs. But then eventually, in 2008, this big set was released that contained all 17 different discs from the 4 individual volumes. And I had to upgrade it because not only did it have great packaging and then have all the DVDs, it also had this exclusive booklet. I've kept it along for many years, even though I've upgraded my DVDs now to Blu-ray and also to digital copies. But this is one of those booklets that was very rare for me at the time because there were not many collections, artifacts out there of Batman the Animated Series. There's a book by Chip Kidd that is amazing, Chip Kidd and Paul Dini. But this was just one of those just rare things that I had in my collection that actually featured some artwork. And you can just see right from the beginning has what seems to be this character artwork, probably used for, promotions like merchandising, gift wrapped posters, shampoo, clothing, things like that. And we're talking at a time when there were WB stores where Warner Brothers would have exclusive toys and artwork in these stores. So you know that they're repurposing and creating artwork just for those specific venues. And a booklet like this has some notes there by one of the producers, Alan Burnett. It was just a treasure for me. So you see some pages here that feature not only the episode titles, but also have some character designs. The good stuff is towards the end here, so I'm going to kind of skip through some of these pages. You can see the evolution of the animated series, not only through the episodes, but also in some of the design where you get some of these attitudes, some of these turnarounds. Then eventually, as you get into later volumes, see some Harley Quinn here as well. Into the new adventures where they get rid of the yellow circle, the streamlined design feels a little bit more consistent with Superman the Animated Series that they're making at the time. Penguin looks more like Burgess Meredith from '66 Batman and a little less like Danny DeVito from Batman Returns. Joker gets these kind of dark, sunken, beady eyes. But this is what I really, really wanted to feature are some of this original artwork from the animation vault as they have it listed on there. So I'm trying to think. So Batman released on September 5th, 1992. First episode was Cat in the Claw Part 1, and it was a Saturday morning, part of the Saturday morning lineup for Fox Kids. They actually released episode 2 on Leather Wings September 6th, Sunday night, and it was in prime time at 7 p.m. Central Standard, and right before Parker Lewis Can't Lose went up against Life Goes On and 60 Minutes. So they thought that it would garner attention not just from kids, but also from an adult audience, and the tone certainly pulled that off. The legacy, the impact that the series has had, but the design work, at least for an artist like me, just had massive influence because you have this, as it's come to be called, this dark deco style that brings in a little bit of 40s pulp, film noir, kind of all put together. Adam Radomski, who worked on the animated series with a number of different talented artistic contributors like Ted Blackman, John Calumet, Richie Chavez, Russell Chong, Ronnie Del Carmen, just a few that I can remember off the top of my head. But Radomski worked on black paper instead of white paper, and you can see in some of these designs where it has that sort of charcoal graphite look, certainly inspired by Anton Furst, who was the designer on the '89 Batman movie. He created Gotham's look, where you had that Gothic architecture, the dark cityscape, the low lighting, the shadows, the ominous, tall, thin columns, the arches, that German expressionism that, also mixing in film noir, art deco. Everything feels like it's looming, like the city could just swallow you up. That's all in here. Perfect place to have seedy abandoned fun houses, circuses, warehouse districts that are probably empty because they're part of the city's past. And you have these shady nightclubs where you can only imagine the type of patrons that would go there. It just introduces a different class of citizen. You have like high society, blue collar politicians, cops, sanitation workers, construction crews that probably work all year round as they make use of the space they have to kind of retrofit buildings and streets, accommodate new technology and building design, all without tearing down like old Gotham to build a new Gotham every day. But it's also a city that's plagued by crime. So just imagine like a working, living city constantly under attack by arsonists and mad scientists and mad bombers, and they're burning the city and blowing parts up of the cityscape. So you have municipal services putting out these fires, building right on top of those remains. So you have this old and new that looks unlike Metropolis, that looks new and modern, probably because of the influence of people like Lex Luthor, who live in mansions like this and skyrises, who have their own agendas. But that's not Gotham. That's Gotham looks old and new at the same time. Some amazing storyboards for On Leather Wings, released on September 6, 1992. That second episode that aired in prime time, that also provided viewers with this sort of aerial tour of Gotham when Batman, using his grappling hook that was introduced in the 89 version with Tim Burton, he's holding on to Man-Bat, who's going through this construction site, incredibly beautifully animated. But then as that's happening, we get to see the blimps, Gordon, Bullock. We get to see a little bit of blood on Batman, and at a time when they had standards and practices that were limiting what the crew could show. They couldn't show strangulation, alcohol, smoking. They couldn't show certain things. Even they had a quota of blood. It felt like on this episode, almost in this scene, they used their quota of blood for the series. But it just started to set the tone for what the show was going to be about. Get into some attitudes and turnaround shots of Bruce Wayne. Gave him his own personality. The big, bulky clothing versus the more sleeker look he gets in the latter season. But I don't know, he has that sense that he could be bumbling, a bit naive, but also feels like he could be the playboy. Just a perfect design for someone that people of Gotham would imagine. This shouldn't be Batman. This doesn't look like Batman. He doesn't move like Batman. So it's a perfect identity for him. And then you have Bruce Timm's work here on these head theories for Batman. And Bruce Timm, inspired by the style of the Fleischer Superman cartoons, also inspired by Alex Toth, who made significant contributions to animation. Space Ghost, Birdman, Herculoids. He was also inspired by Jack Kirby. You can see it in places where there's that angular foreshortening style, the bold outlines, those heroic poses and proportions. You can tell he's figuring out how Batman should move. But then in some of his other designs, you can see the Archie House style comic by Dan DeCarlo that's more rounded, more open, even more humorous. You see a little bit of Chester Gould, who created Dick Tracy, Michael Golden, Marshall Rogers, Wally Wood. All of those artists are in there. Some more shots like Joker, Scarecrow, Two-Face, Gordon. You have Alfred there, and I believe that's by Mike Guggen, who did that artwork. But a little bit of everything, even Baby Doll here. There's early designs that were done by Kevin Nolan and Mike Mignola, well-known comic book artists. But again, at a time when there wasn't really a collection of this, I love this booklet because it just had a little bit here and some, kind of cropped shots, but that was enough for me. And see here kind of the lineup of Clayface, Man-Bat, Hatter, Quinn, Scarecrow in that first iteration. So I love this booklet. Every once in a while, just kind of take it off the shelf and just kind of skim through it. Figured this time might as well record it, throw in a few thoughts in there. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. Again, Batman the Animated Series, big impact on me. Its legacy, the style, the storytelling. Hopefully you've checked out a few episodes. If you haven't, I would absolutely recommend that you do. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Nolan, Burton, Reeves, they've all brought Batman to the big screen, but for my money, the best Batman movie is Mask of the Phantasm. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the adaptation to Mask of the Phantasm, the comic book. Here we go. My name is Bernie Gonzalez. I am a comic book writer and artist, and in these videos I just like to go over some of the comics that have influenced me in my work, in my writing, in my artwork, in my stories. And if you're a fan of Batman, if you're a fan of Batman the Animated Series, Mask of the Phantasm, arguably one of the best Batman movies at least by my book. Animated, live action, doesn't matter. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, amazing. And we're going to go over this one shot that is a comic book adaptation of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So the comic was released in January 1994. The movie was released December 1993, so just a month before, and actually really probably just a few weeks before, because the movie was released on Christmas Day, December 1993. So adaptation doesn't follow much later. The movie, if you read anything about it out there on Wikipedia online, you'll see that the movie did not do very well in the box office. It was made between seasons 1 and 2. It was inspired by Batman Year 2, which was released in 1987. It's the Reaper instead of the Phantasm that we see in Phantasm. But nonetheless, when the movie was released on VHS, in the clamshell, there was a small mini comic that was this. And I just remember seeing this at the time, but then also seeing this mini adaptation of it was really neat, because the book was about yay high, but had all of this artwork here. And I'm not going to go over this one because, well, the glare will kill some of it. The paper quality is very glossy, but I just wanted to show this one because I always remember from the VHS, the smaller version with this amazing Bruce Timm painted design. I don't know, it's on canvas, great texture here. I always loved this one, but same thing. This is the same adaptation, just on newsprint, a little less glossy. So I'm going to go over that one. All right, so Mask of the Phantasm. All right, like I said, released Christmas 1993. It was then direct video. The original was released on VHS. And then it was between, after production of season 1, Batman, Joker, Phantasm. But we're looking at Kelly Puckett, who does the writing, Mike Pirobeck, who unfortunately died at a very early age. He's worked on a number of different comics, Impact Comics. I might have to go over some of those because I have a good collection of those, namely like The Fly and the Comet Black Hood. But he worked on some of those as well. And inked by Rick Burkett. There's a lot of artists that have worked on these Batman animated series style books, Batman Adventures, Gotham Adventures, and they all kind of take a bit from what Bruce Timm and the team established in Batman the Animated Series for the show, and then just brought in a little bit of themselves, but with a lot of those Bruce Timm stylings. We get artists like Tim Levins, Ty Templeton, obviously Mike Pirobeck, Rich Burchett, who himself not only inked but has drawn it. Christopher Jones is another artist I can think of, but I wanted to go over this because, again, if you've seen the movie, it's kind of interesting to see how it's adapted, what's shortened, what's completely avoided, what's brought in, what do they focus on. You know, starting off with that first page, you can just see, like in the movie, once you get past that amazing score, we're just setting up the fact that this is Gotham, and just really great rendering here. I love the color choices, the fact that the yellow just really pops in the night sky. You know, you could almost go even almost like a dark silhouette on some of these and get rid of some of this red and just really make it pop. Surprised they didn't go with the red that you would see in all the skies in the TV show, in the animated series. But again, the comics were inspired by the series, but we're also doing a little bit of their own thing. So, but still, just great design work here. You don't necessarily get the same sort of slow reveals, the skulking, the really like looming Batman shots like you would get in the movie. They have to do a lot more with a lot less time and a lot less pages. You do get a few of the shots. I always love this bridge from the animated series, from the movie. The way they rendered that just has this really interesting art choice. Really neat. Reminds me a bit of the Art Deco designs that they featured in the 89 Burton movie. And then here you get the whole, you could almost hear it. Chucky Soul, your angel of death awaits. But quicker reveal, because they don't have a lot of pages, so they got to get through it. We don't get the cool car scene in the car garage like we do in the movie, but we do get the dramatic Phantasm. We do get similar shot here. You could almost see that shot from the movie where they almost focus in on his eyes. Interesting how they did the smoke. It's kind of, I don't know, almost like a charcoal kind of feel. It'd be interesting to see what some of these originals look like, because there's, look at the rendering. They made a lot of simple, clean choices. There's not a lot of that 90s Image Comics extreme style coloring. There's a lot of flats. There's some great highlights, effective highlights. And then when you get into some of these special effects, there's not a lot of color holds, but then this kind of stands out. But it totally works. Almost looks like it could be really good for like a sandstorm type of design. Then I like this. It's kind of cool just how they incorporated the FX into the car smashing through. Again, using that shot again, that kind of charcoal, kind of neat. Love that. Just everything they did in designing Batman, very economical, but it's kind of an interesting way of doing the nose, just rendering it in black there. Kind of talky pages, not much going on here, but very similar to the scene from the movie, if you remember that. I do also like when artists are confident enough to not have to do a lot of rendering, and in this case, they did a great job in Alfred's jacket, where it's completely black, but more specifically in this panel down here, where maybe another artist who wasn't as confident might have felt the need to render some shadows on the sides, but it's not necessary. Your mind can kind of fill in everything that's going on here. You can see what's happening, and you know that Alfred is just standing there in the shadows. Completely works. Again, some of that kind of charcoal rendering. I have to imagine the originals must have some of that, or like a really dry ink pen where you get your ink pen to just essentially just dry so that it's a bit rough and it kind of gives you that cool texture. Again, mimicking some of the same scenes from the movie. Bruce visiting the tombstone. We get the first shots of Andrea Beaumont and the witty back and forth. The hair is just a great choice. I mean, it's very bold and it pops. Totally works. And you just get this dichotomy between the evening and then the day. Even if we are in a cemetery, the scene doesn't feel gloomy. It doesn't feel heavy. There's this kind of rat-a-tat back between Andrea and Bruce. So it works. Although you still get Bruce doing the Batman eyes there. All right, then we've got Bruce pre-Batman outfit doing his early vigilantism. This whole scene is just great in the movie. They did a pretty good job in this one. On your arms, on your stomachs, arms spread. When I hear Batman speak, I think of Kevin Conroy, so it just takes me back to that scene in the movie. A lot of movement, a lot of things here, but the colors are not distracting. Everything, you can tell who everyone is. Guy with the red cap, got it. But Batman in the kind of like dark teal blue there. So we can see who everyone is. So when we get to a page like this, it may seem a little busy, but it's not, because you can tell everything that's going on. We're seeing Batman moving these guys around. It's kind of interesting, though, that they took 2 pages to demonstrate all of this. I mean, I get the kind of like celebratory mode here where he's like, yeah, everything he's been training for, everything Bruce Wayne has been doing is paying off. Maybe this vigilante thing could work for a book that only has, probably, let's take a look here, 60-some pages. 2 pages to just show this fight scene is a lot of real estate, but great dynamism, great movement. Then we cut to Bruce having Alfred read about his nightly exploits. Great acting here, and using a little bit of his martial arts to subdue Andrea Beaumont and make his move. Love this shot. This is a great panel. Just the color choices are great, and while we can tell, it's barely tell, honestly, that it's in a cemetery, but it's moody, that's for sure. And very different from what we just saw on the previous page with some of these much more vibrant colors. Again, mimicking some of the same shots, except this time a little bit more. If the movie was already G-rated, this, you don't get any of the shadow of the falling cemetery tombstone thing there. Even this whole shot, very quick. This is kind of like one of those quick little scenes to set everything up in the movie. This now, it's literally just a panel, and even then it's like an insert within an establishing panel. Got Andrea visiting her parents. Meanwhile, she sees that Batman is also there, seeming to talk to a tombstone. She connects the two, realizes he's talking to a tombstone that says Wayne. She deduces maybe, that's Bruce. So she's also a pretty good detective in her own right. This shot right here, if you know the movie, you know that shot. It's that painted panel. You can almost hear the music, dun, 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 to the future. Just again, the movie's so good, and they did a good job here. This is interesting panel work, especially with the little rounded. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. It's an interesting choice. I'll say that. They get a lot of that Metropolis type design, Fritz Lang feel in there. World's Fair in the future. Addressing the future as they see it at the time. Interesting choices. Not very dynamic angles, but totally works. Interesting again. We get back to those rounded borders. Kind of weird. Get the first shot of the Batmobile, and you get the sense that Bruce Wayne has seen kind of like what could be the prototype to the Batmobile. The scene here, and this is where you get some old comics where you get some bleed on one page to the other. That's okay. You get the shot of Bruce defending Andrea from these bikers. The shot it's hard to replicate that sort of action from the movie where he does the kick while the guy's coming at him with the music. It's hard to replicate that, but they did a pretty good job actually. Getting hit in the stomach when he turns away and looks at Andrea, who's just like come back and basically stop fighting, and he has to kind of reevaluate what he's doing, and the fact that he's doing this in front of Andrea. Maybe this isn't the time. You can almost hear Kevin Conroy, I just don't know. I don't know. And just slams the wall. Just great design. But here we do get the red sky, and that's why that yellow moon just pops. This is interesting because this was done in the coloring phase where they added I think those are window mullions, but the shadows on his face. I don't know. I would have definitely just done some ink slinging and put that on his face to really show how dramatic and moody it could be with the shadows, but that's okay. Famous scene from the cartoon, from the movie, where he's just like, I know I made a promise, please tell me it's okay. Bruce is bearing his soul in front of his parents. Andrea comes in, consoles him. Love the color choices here, just everything from the skin tones, the little orange, the purple there, sorry. Good gestures. This guy's incredibly dramatic, and just like you see his faces compared to everyone else, everything is very stylistic, but just the gesturing, the acting there on 11. Meanwhile, Batman's in the cave here. Obviously, we see maybe some nods to Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, doing a few nods to famous Batman contributors and creators. Again, a profile. Love that. The choices that Parobic made here. Didn't have to show the whole mouth. Just completely works. And I love how he did the shadow here on this one. In that other previous one, it was just the nose. That totally works. You could have gone so far as to just make the whole thing black, but either way, incredibly effective. All right, shot of Bruce proposing to Andrea. This is always interesting to me because when you get something as stylized as this Batman animated series design, when you draw animals, it has to also work within that. So when you see horses in like the Ra's al Ghul episodes, it's got to work in that style. So the bats, good job by Parobic, and just keeping it simple enough where you don't start over rendering the fur or doing things that distract from the style. It makes it seem like the style doesn't complement or fit in with everything else, but all works perfectly. Back to the night scene. You almost have to imagine that this was on the original, just a regular empty sky, and the colorist is the one who's bringing that in, unless Mike Parobic is maybe suggesting it with a circle there. But either way, incredibly effective and totally works. Get the creepy shot of the guy here. Just good acting. And again, back to that sort of charcoal outline. This one's a little easier because we get that dramatic shot, the dramatic scene in the movie. This is where I would have liked them to actually take a page to do that scene where he's first putting it on and you see Alfred's unbelievable reaction, like, oh God, he's darker, he's the boy that I saw grow up, and now he's become this creature of the night, he's become Batman. Instead of taking those 2 pages previously to show Batman vigilante fighting, this was the time to use that real estate for that reveal just as well as they pasted in the movie. So a little bit rushed here, especially when we get from the Bruce Wayne receiving the Dear John note, reacting to it with a no, going into the cave, getting the gloves, putting on the mask for what is likely the first time we see the sort of like early Batman design where he's a little bulkier. But again, just would have spent more time doing that. All right, the purple is paying off because before, color choices, now we see that the Joker is a part of this now. He's in the same spot as we saw before in the World of the Future museum display. And he's talking to Chucky Soul. Not the biggest fan of some of these designs. It has like a, I don't know, like a Dick Sprang kind of feel to it. There's something that is very roundish in the first iteration that Bruce Timm does of the Joker in the first season. After that, it starts getting a little bit more angular. But there's some things here just feel a little off at times. Like the eyes feel just a little too close. But that profile is right on point. Just larger than life. And I know the Joker is, but in times it almost feels really, really cartoonish when the style is like almost cartoonish, but not 100% cartoonish. Just stylized. Chucky Soul there. Got the dynamite explosion. Back to the that charcoal rendering here that the Phantasm has in that cloud. Like that rendering here. Just keep it simple, mysterious. Cool chase scene. Nice explosion. Good color use here. Just a color that's completely different from everything else. Makes that scene pop. Again, they have to move this quickly along. So what would have taken a few minutes in the cartoon, you're doing here in a few panels. But they Parobeck does a really good job of being very economical, just moving everything along. That scene of Batman making his way through, and then next thing you know, you reveal that it's he's put the cape and cowl on one of those wooden the workhorses to distract Gotham PD, but Andrea gets there in time to get him out. And then we get the exposition where we get to review everything. Andrea, her dad, Andrea leaving the following morning. Batman realizing that when he goes to that old picture, when he draws on top of it, would have been interesting, honestly, if they had just done all the pencil work in red, just to let you see that he was drawing on top of it instead of just the smile. But absolutely works. I also love how in some of these, Bruce Wayne's hair, it's just black. Absolutely works. And then there's moments like this where, maybe I would have put Alfred just a little bit further back so you don't have to do that little bit of line in between to show that separation. But still works. Now we're getting a bit rushed. Exposition City here. 2 pages, moving the story along. The friend there who's been exposed to the Joker gas. Batman talks to him. Again, we're moving things along quickly. And now we get to the showdown between Andrea, the Phantasm, the Joker, and Batman, all in the World of the Future display. This is where, the last, maybe like, I want to say last 15, 20 minutes of the movie, it's probably more like 15 minutes, is this final scene, this final showdown. And it's paced so well done that I understand, when you're talking, you're on page 55, you've only got 5, 6, 7 pages to go, so you don't have a lot of real estate left, so you're kind of cramming it in towards the end. But, at the sacrifice, some of those great scenes with the turbine, that giant turbine in the movie, are broken down to just 3 panels, and, that's what you have to do. But great gesture work, great, great, the hair, everything being moved through the air here, in like towards the turbine. Well done. I love the fact that Parobeck decided to keep her costume in black. No need to render. It could be leather. It could have some sort of other cloth texture. Doesn't matter. It's just black. Absolutely works. Batman throws the bat bike into the turbine, stops it. Meanwhile, she disappears. Batman. Love that shot here. This would have been interesting to kind of show maybe from an even more of a worm's eye view, just to really, really highlight that sort of, that just looks exaggerated. Batman's not that tall in a city. This is meant to be like Godzilla size, but absolutely works. I would have just gone even more dramatic. And in a case like this where the Joker is taking off, something where you could see maybe this is where the worm's eye view makes sense. Batman looking up at the Joker as he's going away, not from this high angle. But again, adaptation, so you got to do what you got to do. I like how they use the statue there as kind of like this backdrop, just to establish the fact that Joker is making his way up. Again, that charcoal cloud, and yet still at the same time, it looks like when the charcoal maybe didn't work or the brush didn't work, they just went in with was probably a small brush or a micron or something to kind of finish that up. Joker in the hands of Andrea. Does a good job drawing her face. She just looks, the extra line work in her eyes, which you normally see like a very economical face. There's not a lot of lines in these faces. She has a little bit more in her eyes. So there's a little bit more life compared to, eyes like this, or in Batman's case like there, or even in that. So this one, she has a little bit less, but absolutely works, and they keep it consistent throughout the whole issue. Finally, we see kind of like that last moment. Batman in the movie is looking up as the bat signal is going up in the air. She's on the boat. She's like, "Hey, I'm alone." And then you get the nice pinup. So yeah, Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, the comic book adaptation. Great one shot. Again, feels a little hurried. This would be great if it had been 120 pages, twice as long, or even longer, where you're almost doing a page a minute. So if the movie's like an hour and 20 minutes, all right, we'll give it a page a minute. 120 pages would be just fine. You wouldn't have to get so rushed throughout this. But for something that I saw as a kid, loved it, loved every adaptation of it. So I'm proud to own this. And again, you can just see how well Bruce Timm's style from the animated series translates to comics, and how really good artists like Ty Templeton, in this case Mike Perelbeck and Rich Burkett, are able to take Bruce Timm's style and make it their own and tell a story that fits in the world of Batman animated. Thanks for checking out my review of Mask of the Phantasm, Batman the Animated Movie. Thanks for watching. Magazines, remember those? I do. Let's go back to 1992. I went digging through the crates to talk about, of course, Batman the Animated Series in Comic Scene number 29. Here we go. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the video. My name is Bernie Gonzalez, and I am a comic book writer and artist. I wanted to share these influences on my artwork, on my creative process with you, because they are things that, help explain how I tick, how I think creatively, how I put together a story. And this isn't a comic book. It's not a graphic novel. It's a little bit off-center, but nonetheless, it was a big influence for me, and I wanted to share it. And it's because, if you've seen my artwork, if you've seen my storytelling, if you've ever heard me on a podcast or just check out any of my social media feeds, you'll see that I am a huge fan of Batman the Animated Series. And one of my first interactions with the animated series before the cartoon was actually this magazine, Comics Scene number 29. And I wanted to go over it because it has some of the first previews of Batman the Animated Series that I certainly ever saw. And that helped me get excited for the upcoming show, and then eventually what it would mean to me and my artistic influence, the big influence that it would become. So, Comic Scene number 29. So this was published by Starlog, and if you're not familiar with Starlog or some of the other publications like Cinemagic, they also, if you're a horror fan like me, also published Fangoria. And Comic Scene, this issue specifically was released in 1992. That would have been my sophomore year in high school. And when you think about 1992 in comics, you had Spawn, Cyberforce, Youngblood, Dark Stars from DC, which had some really early Travis Charest artwork. The Heckler also from DC, along with Sword of Azrael. You had Spider-Man 2099, Punisher Warzone, and lastly, so let's not forget, Defenders of Dynatron City, which was like a one-shot Saturday morning cartoon I saw once, loved it, never came out again. Well, Marvel wound up publishing some comics for Defenders of Dynatron City. But nonetheless, we're talking about this. And some of the contemporaries for comic scene would have been Wizard. Wizard was in its early days at the time. This would have been released October 1992. So Wizard was just on issue number 14. Comic scene was on issue number 29, so had a little bit of a head start. So you're not seeing double here. I just wanted to illustrate. I found this comic a long time ago, or rather, I saw this magazine a long time ago, and I cut out the pages that I wanted because, it was about Batman the Animated Series. But I ran into this recently at a convention, and I thought it might be kind of interesting to pick it up because it helps put things in context. So I'm going to flip through some of it and just provide a little context so you can see who, all the things that were happening at the time and kind of reveal what was going on when Batman first made its appearance on the scene. All right, so it looks like out of the gate, we've got a little bit of, I believe it's Joe Jusko, who did some of the artwork on these. Some Simpsons, looks like collector plates, interesting time. Table of context, Batman 89, big impact in the world of comics. Obviously, as a comics magazine, they would cover that, but they also covered indie comics. Indie comics, kind of with a capital I. Kind of go through, they had their letter pages here and go right into Batman 89. Again, big impact that it had, and in this case, they're interviewing Michael Keaton and some of his reactions about the movie and its popularity as Returns has also now become very popular. Speaking of indie comics, they also cover Cheeseheads. And slightly less indie comics, but at the time, you have Cyberforce by Image, created by Mark Silvestri. Again, with Spawn #1 coming out in 1992 along with Youngblood, Cyberforce was also on the shelves. Just gives you an idea for what was out there. And, they're sharing some behind-the-scenes artwork. And in cases like this, as a young comic book fan myself, this is all I had. I had Wizard, I had Comic Scene. These allowed me to have a little bit of a behind the scenes to not only some of the artwork and get excited for this, but also for the creators, for the people that were actually making these things that I was picking up on the shelves. Let's see here. Next page, you have Retaliator by Eclipse Comics, and has some Tim Bradstreet art. I loved his artwork on Punisher, on those covers, but some of the early artwork that he did here. A little bit more Tim Bradstreet here. See, 1992. Obviously, interior artwork not by Tim Bradstreet. All right, let's see here. What do we have? I think this is Onyx Overlord by Jerry Bingham, and it was based on a spin-off of Mobius's Airtight Garage. You can see some artwork here. That's Mignola, certainly. Katashiro Otomo, Will Eisner, some big names here. Kevin O'Neill. Getting into Kelly Jones, artist of Deadman, Aliens, and Batman. Batman Red Rain, that's how I always remember him. Loved his artwork. Look at that. Again, this is the only way I was seeing things like this, were through magazines like Comic Scene that were giving me that behind the scenes and actually putting faces to the artist names. Now I knew what they looked like. I wasn't going to cons. I was too young at the time, and cons were not nearly what they are now, but you could actually get a sense for who the person was a little bit, although you could tell everyone's kind of posing for that artist-writer picture there. Then we've got the main article here, but I'm going to skip through this because I just want to tackle some other things here. We've got Shadowhawk. Also, I think, yep, on the cover, Shadowhawk, dark superhero. Again, Time of Image Comics. Arson, I remember that. But look at that. As a young comic book artist, this was amazing. I loved that kind of process work, being able to see a little bit of the behind the scenes on the artwork, how these artists like Valentino were putting this stuff together. I just ate the stuff up. And then to be able to see the pencils and the ink work, this was amazing. Again, they also published some Star Trek stuff, a lot of sci-fi, as well. Got the Love and Rockets. It looks like some talk about Fantastic Four, the radio show. I've never heard of that. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm a fan of old-time radio, OTR, like The Shadow, Inner Sanctum, Superman, the Sherlock Holmes, old-time radio stuff. But I'm going to have to check this one out because I have not heard of this. Kind of interesting. Yeah, let's see what else we got here. Told you, Batman was big at the time. Get those costumes for your upcoming Halloween party, or I guess any time of the year. Simpsons, also really big at the time. Got a memorial for William Gaines, the mind behind Man magazine, who also passed away in 1992. And kind of interesting here, kind of worth checking out here. So this is, well, this is subscription here, but this is interesting here. We've got a ton of projects, both animated and live action, that are in development. And this kind of will give you a sense for what was about to be made at the time, or what they were hoping to make. Everything from Battletoads to Beakman's World, Black Panther, and at the time it was supposed to start Wesley Snipes, The Crow before it became The Crow, The Mask, Eek the Cat, talk about Fox Kids, Spider-Man with James, directed by James Cameron, and the Tales from the Crypt for HBO. Looks like a sequel to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Baby's Kids. So this kind of gives you a sense for the time. Battletech, I remember that. So, and of course, this kind of gives you, you know, look at these comics. Supreme, Ghost Rider, mentioned before, Spider-Man 2099. You have Valiant here with Hardcore. I think that was that Jim Lee cover. But you've got, this is the world at the time. So I'm picking this up on the shelf, and this jumps out at me because everything about that image, just before even knowing what it was, I was already in love, and I had to find out more about this. So let's get into Batman the Animated Series. All right, the article titled Animated Nights by Pat Jankanowitz. Sorry if I just butchered that up there. And at a time before social media, before YouTube, it was hard to find information about this upcoming Batman the Animated Series. And prior to this, the only animated incarnations of Batman included 1968's Adventures of Batman, and that was riding the success of the 66 show featuring Adam West. But in that case, in the 68 animated show, they actually replaced Burt Ward's voice. So he was not the voice of Robin. It was Casey Kasem, if I'm right. Then in 1973, you have Super Friends with Superman, Wonder Woman, Robin, Aquaman, and a bunch of kids in it to, you know, help relate for the kids that are watching on TV. That eventually became Challenge of the Super Friends. 1977, you have the New Adventures of Batman. That introduced Batmite, and in that case, Burt Ward did come back to do the voice years after the live-action show had been canceled, and only lasted one season, The New Adventures of Batman. But you have from 1977 now to 1992, and Batman the Animated Series, which reinvented Batman with a dark deco 40s pulp noir tone. First episode airing September 5th, 1992, part of the Saturday morning Fox Kids lineup. First episode that aired was the Cat in the Claw Part 1. I remember watching that, recording that on Saturday morning, but also the following day, Sunday, September 6th, 1992, they aired On Leather Wings in prime time on a Sunday night, 7 p.m. Central, right before Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and it was going against 60 Minutes on CBS and Life Goes On ABC. So that's how strongly they felt about Batman the Animated Series. They wanted to introduce adults and kids alike to the show because they felt that both audiences would have an appreciation for what they were able to do. So in this article, they really only talk to Alan Burnett. They don't talk to Bruce Timm or Eric Radomski, some of the other folks that were really influential putting together the animated series. So at least I'll mention a little bit about them. Bruce Timm, Eric Radomski, they put together this promo clip for the producer of the show, Gene McCurdy, that defined the show's tone and it was certainly influenced by the Fleischer Superman cartoons. Gene McCurdy then brings in Alan Burnett, who's interviewed in this article, and he describes how he was brought into the series by Gene McCurdy, not by Bruce Timm or Eric Radomski. They mentioned a little bit about the Dark Deco style, how they were looking at previous Batman stories to adapt, how he had gone through the Batman Encyclopedia, the greatest Batman stories ever told, looking for stories that they could adapt into the animated series. And he goes into a summary of some of the episodes. They've got a nice runway because they get a 65 episode commitment. And I imagine it's a pretty easy bet to bet on Batman, especially after the success of the 89 Batman movie and then Returns. But the fact that they are able to adapt these stories, and then, he just goes into how proud he is about some of these, mentions The Man Who Killed Batman, It's Never Too Late, Perchance to Dream, just in overall, just talking about the more mature tone of the series, while at the same time acknowledging the things that they could not do on the show due to broadcast standards and practices. So couldn't show murder, there was a quota of blood, although I felt like on that Sunday primetime episode on Leather Wings, which might make sense why they saved it for prime time. They might have used their entire quota for blood because Batman definitely got some blood on him after fighting Man-Bat. Alan Burnett goes over some of the writers, some that come from animation and some that come from the world of comics, including Marty Pasco, who worked on Wonder Woman and Star Trek, Jerry Conway, who's was at Spider-Man, Punisher, Firestorm. I believe he created Firestorm, also worked on JLA. Elliot Maggin, who worked on Green Lantern and Batman. Of course, Denny O'Neil worked on Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow. And Paul Dini, who talk about animation, worked on He-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, and Tiny Toons. Goes over some of the voice actors as well in this next section here. And we start seeing some of the early concept design, some of the early work there from Batman to Two-Face. And again, as a fan of Batman at the time, I was collecting Batman. Sword of Azrael was out at the time, so the entire Nightfall, Night's End, all of that drama was ramping up. And there was Batman, there was Detective. I believe Gotham Knights was not out yet. Arkham Asylum, Robin. There was so much Batman content out there, and I loved it, and I was picking most of it up. So to see something like this that looked different from everything that I was looking at, but at the same time brought in all the stuff that I knew. I knew Alfred, I knew Commissioner Gordon, I knew Two-Face, and the designs for this just look so great. This is the first time I'm seeing this. I know that they brought in comic book artists like Mike Mignola, who wound up designing Mr. Freeze. Kevin Nolan did some early design work as well. Believed he did Batman, Robin, Joker, Penguin, Catwoman, but also other characters that I was not as familiar with, like Ra's al Ghul and Killer Croc in Man-Bat. See some of the character designs for those. Alan Burnett goes into some of the voice actors, some of the many people that contributed to the show. And I imagine, for an article, it's easier, it's sexier to talk about some of the voice actors and start dropping names like Mark Hamill, Bob Hastings, other people that are working on the show, compared to talking about comic book writers and artists, because you hope that people get excited by hearing some of these names, and because of that will be gravitated to watch the show. He also goes over world building and how they're introducing Harley Quinn, Summer Gleason, Officer Montoya, the ninja Kyodai Ken, and really going into Bruce Wayne's background and his training, Barbara Gordon and Batgirl, and how they're going to introduce her. But also in this world of Gotham, they're going to fill it in with things like Crime Alley, Arkham Asylum, and into even the story behind the origin of the Batmobile. And, talk about how they say he's a whistleblower that Batman saves. Batman says, I need a car. So you could tell they're starting to build out. They have a structure, an idea for what they want the series to be over 65 episodes. He goes into the tone, talks about how it's action and thrilling, but they're also being conscientious of the limitations, the network notes, how it's ultimately a cartoon for kids. And Alan Burnett also mentions that in these 65 episodes, There's talk of potentially doing a direct to VHS, direct to cassette length version, which ultimately is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So the idea that eventually the show finds its audience and gives them the ability to make that, gives us Mask of the Phantasm. But it seems like they're building up to something. And again, having not watched any episodes at this point, just being able to start seeing that they're going to start putting all of this stuff from the comics. They're going to bring in different adaptations. You feel like you're in good hands, because if they're looking at Norm Brayfogle, Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, if they're looking to those folks as pillars to try to establish the tone of the show, then you know you're in good hands. That's pretty much the article, but just wanted to share it because, again, you don't see a lot of this at the time, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff about the series. And again, for me, this was everything. To see some stills, to see some shots, to see some of the tone, to understand that it seems like they have a plan, they have a mission. Little did they know they're going to have a big influence on me as a writer, as a creator, as an artist. And, I can only look back at this with nostalgia, but also realize that this magazine right here is actually pretty influential. Eventually, obviously, the cartoon and the other books, the Batman Adventures, Batman and Robin Adventures, all the comics they made, that's all great. But to be able to kind of go back to this, to have a copy of this and be able to look back at it, remember as a sophomore in high school picking this up and saying, okay, I think I'm going to check this out. Kind of neat to have. So hopefully you enjoyed this walk down memory lane with me. And thanks for watching.
We'll be right back.